In the suffocating jungle of Vietnam, November 1965, Sergeant John Carter, a 22-year-old from Texas, led his squad through the Ia Drang Valley. Every step was a gamble with death. The jungle wasn't just trees and vines. It was a labyrinth of terror, where a misplaced foot could trigger a wire, a branch could hide a blade, and silence could erupt into screams. Suddenly, a sharp swoosh tore through the air. A mace, a spiked wooden ball slung from the treetops, swung down, slamming into the chest of Private Tommy Hayes. Blood sprayed, staining the earth red. Tommy collapsed, eyes wide with shock, life draining from him in seconds. Before John could react, a deafening blast shook the ground. Private Bobby Lee, walking beside him, stepped on a hidden mine. The explosion shredded Bobby's leg, his screams echoing as blood pooled beneath him. John dropped to his knees, hands trembling, trying to stem the flow, but the blood slipped through his fingers. "Save me, please," Bobby whispered, then passed out. The squad froze, too terrified to move. The jungle wasn't just a battlefield, it was hell. On the other side of the war, Victor Nguyen, a 19-year-old Viet Cong guerrilla, worked in the shadows. His thin hands trembled as he tied a tripwire to a mace, but his eyes burned with resolve. "This is how we protect our village," he thought, remembering his sister, killed in a U.S. airstrike 2 years earlier. To Victor, each trap was a defiance of the odds, a weapon of the weak against the mighty. The story of Vietnam's booby traps isn't just about blood and death. It's about courage, fear, and the desperate will to survive. How did soldiers like John endure this nightmare? Who crafted these brutal traps? And why, decades later, do their scars still haunt us? By 1965, the Vietnam War had escalated into a brutal stalemate. The U.S. poured 200,000 troops into South Vietnam, backed by B-52 bombers, tanks, and heavy artillery. The Viet Cong, the guerrilla arm of the National Liberation Front, had no such firepower. They had the jungle, their resilience, and an arsenal of homemade traps. According to the Australian Ministry of Defence, booby traps caused 11% of U.S. deaths and 15% of injuries, roughly 45,000 of the 300,000 wounded. These cold numbers can't capture the terror they unleashed. In the Ia Drang Valley, traps turned a tactical fight into a slaughter. American soldiers, trained for open combat, were unprepared for invisible wires and camouflaged pits. Viet Cong fighters, from farmers to children, built traps, transforming paths and clearings into death zones. Among them was Tran Tu Tam, dubbed the King of Mines, who repurposed American and French explosives to devastate enemy ranks. "We had no tanks, but we had our minds and our hearts," a guerrilla once said. Traps didn't just kill, they slowed U.S. formations, sowed dread, and turned the jungle into an unseen enemy for men like John, and a steadfast ally for men like Victor. John Carter never forgot the sound of that mace, the swoosh that killed Tommy. It haunted his dreams. The mace was a crude but deadly device, a ball of wood or metal, studded with bamboo or iron spikes hung from trees by a tripwire. A soldier's boot snagged the wire, and the mace swung down, piercing skull or chest. Death was often instant, but survivors faced agony, spikes lodged too deep to remove without tearing flesh apart. Victor learned to make maces from his grandfather, a veteran of the French resistance. Use bamboo and mud, the old man taught. Victor mixed river mud with sharpened stakes, dried it in the sun, and tied the ball with vines. Sometimes he coated the spikes with snake venom for extra lethality. In hours, he could craft a trap alone, hide it in the canopy, and move on. Each trap is a blow against them, he thought, though his heart sank, imagining the screams. John, after Tommy's death, grew paranoid, checking every leaf, every branch. "If I lead, I die," he muttered, yet he kept leading. The mace didn't just take lives, it crushed spirits. Days later, on November 15th, the squad lost another man. Private Tom Riley, a 19-year-old from Ohio who dreamed of teaching history, stepped onto a camouflaged mat of leaves and plunged into a pit of punji sticks. Sharpened bamboo stakes, smeared with human feces, pierced his legs. His screams shook the jungle as blood soaked the earth. John and the medic tried to pull him out, but the stakes tore deeper and infections set in. Without antibiotics, Tom's wounds festered. 3 days later, he died, clutching a half-written letter to his mother. "I'm sorry I won't make it home." Punji pits were simple but horrific. Viet Cong dug deep holes, planted stakes upward, and covered them with woven branches. Some stakes were barbed, ripping flesh as victims struggled free. The feces ensured infection, turning minor wounds into death sentences in the humid jungle. Victor dug punji pits with a heavy heart, thinking of his sister's grave. "For you, I'll keep fighting," he whispered, sharpening each stake. He knew the traps killed, but he saw no other way. John, after Tom's death, hated the jungle, the chirping birds, the rustling leaves, his own footsteps. Punji sticks didn't just kill Tom, they stole the squad's hope. A week later, John narrowly escaped death. Searching an abandoned Viet Cong pack, he heard a hiss. A bamboo pit viper, small but lethal, slithered out. John froze, heart pounding, hands shaking as he backed away. "Snakes. Why'd it have to be snakes?" he muttered, echoing Indiana Jones, a line the squad used to laugh off fear. Viper pits were the stuff of nightmares. Viet Cong dug holes, filled them with dozens of two-step vipers, so named because their venom could kill in minutes, and hid them under leaves. A soldier who fell in faced hundreds of bites. Baby vipers were worse, unable to control their venom, injecting it all in one strike. Victor caught snakes in the jungle, choosing the smallest, most aggressive ones. As he tied them to sticks or stuffed them in packs, he remembered his mother teaching him to trap snakes as a boy. "They're our allies now," he thought, picturing American soldiers panicking. But guilt gnawed at him. Each snake was a death he'd caused. John, after that close call, refused to touch enemy gear. He dreamed of snakes crawling over him, biting his heart. Viper pits didn't just kill, they birthed living nightmares. On November 20th, the squad walked into a trap that nearly ended them all. A soldier tripped a wire, yanking 2 grenades from tin cans rigged in the trees. The twin explosions sent shrapnel and splinters flying, killing 3 men and wounding 4. John, standing at the rear, ducked as the blast roared, ears ringing. "God, why are we still here?" he shouted, voice breaking. Grenade-in-a-can traps were devastatingly simple. Viet Cong stuffed live grenades, pins removed, into cans with tripwires tied to the ends. A tug, and the grenades detonated, shredding anyone nearby. Easy to make and hide, they littered the jungle, and after the war, thousands remained, killing civilians. Victor set these traps on paths Americans used, using rusted cans for camouflage. Before tying the wire, he scratched his sister's name into the metal, a silent tribute. "If they don't come, no one dies," he told himself, but he knew the traps could outlive the war. John, the lone survivor of that blast, carried guilt like a wound. The grenades didn't just destroy bodies, they shattered souls. A month later, John faced another horror. As the squad moved down a trail, a tripwire snapped and a bamboo whip, a long pole studded with spikes, lashed out, slamming into John's leg. Spikes dug deep, blood soaking his boot. He screamed as his squad struggled to free him, each spike coated in feces to ensure infection. Hours later, they pulled him out, but the wound festered, leaving John limping for life. Bamboo whips used the jungle's strength. Viet Cong bent sturdy bamboo, tied it with vines, and rigged it to a wire. When triggered, it whipped forward, impaling shins, thighs, or worse, chests and necks. Victor crafted dozens of whips, sharpening spikes with care. "Bamboo is our strength," he said, echoing his father's words. But each trap weighed on him. A prayer whispered that no innocent would trigger it. John, scarred by the whip, grew to respect his enemy's cunning, even as he cursed the jungle. The whip didn't just wound, it taught him the Viet Cong's resolve. The traps didn't just kill, they waged war on the mind. John became paranoid, jumping at every rustle, sleeping with his rifle clutched tight. He saw Tommy's face in nightmares, heard Bobby's screams. His squad was fraying, men snapping at shadows, firing at nothing. Historians note that traps eroded American morale, making soldiers doubt victory. The Viet Cong, meanwhile, saw traps as their equalizer. Victor knew they couldn't match US firepower. The traps turned the jungle into their domain. They slowed patrols, set up ambushes, and forced Americans to use metal detectors, hiking war costs. Tran to Tam, the king of mines, once rigged a stolen US mine to destroy a tank convoy, a feat that became legend. "We fought with what we had," Victor thought, pride mixing with sorrow. Nurse Sarah Miller, who treated John's whip wound, saw the trap's toll up close. Under enemy fire, she dragged a soldier from a punji pit, bullets whizzing past, only to watch him die of infection. "I saved their bodies, but their minds are gone," she wrote in her journal. Sarah, like John and Victor, was a victim of the war's cruelty, her compassion tested by endless loss. The traps changed the war itself. In battles like Hamburger Hill and Operation Kingfisher, they amplified American losses, forcing tactical shifts. They were the Viet Cong's genius, a people's war fought with bamboo and grit. The Vietnam War ended in 1975, but the trap's legacy endured. Around 40,000 Vietnamese, children, farmers, elders, died from leftover mines and grenades. In a village called Hoa Binh in Quang Tri, a girl named Mai lost her leg to a mine in 1980, but grew up to become a teacher, inspiring her community to rebuild. Organizations like MAG and Peace Trees still clear explosives today, turning scars into hope. John Carter returned to Texas, haunted but determined to share his story. "We fought, we bled, but we learned," he told veterans groups, urging them to value peace. Victor Nguyen, if he survived, might still be in his village, telling his grandchildren how he fought for their future. Both men, on opposite sides, were unsung heroes, bound by sacrifice. Tran to Tam's mines, like the traps of countless others, were a testament to human ingenuity and the cost of war. In 1966, one of his repurposed mines obliterated an American supply truck, a strike that echoed through US command. His name became a whisper of fear, a symbol of resistance. The traps remind us that war spares no one, not the soldier, the guerrilla, nor the child who steps on a mine years later. They teach us that peace isn't free. It's paid in blood, tears, and the will to heal. This story of Vietnam's booby traps is part of the Untold War, where courage and pain intertwine. If you're moved by these unsung heroes, subscribe to History Told by John for more Vietnam War untold stories. Veterans, share this to honor your brothers in arms. Comment which trap shocked you most and spread this tale to keep history alive. Never forget, because history is our lesson for peace.